Welcome to our TV Showrunners group panel. We are here with Eric Kripke for The Boys, Billy Ray for The Comey Rule, Liz Feldman for Dead to Me, Prentice Penny for Insecure, and Lee Eisenberg for Little America. I am Marcus James Dixon, a senior editor at Gold Derby, and this is a question for everyone. I'll start with Liz. What was the moment in your life when you knew you wanted to work in television, and how did you make that initial step?
I am one of those people who have always known what I wanted to do. I was absolutely obsessed with TV from the first moment I ever saw it. There was a show called Romper Room that was on when oh, thank you. Sometimes I make that reference and it's just like a sea of millennials and they're like, I don't know.
Great show.
But it was a children's show, and she would, the host would say your name and call you in, and you would actually be able to like go to the show and be in the audience, and it's like all I ever wanted. So I never got chosen, but it did sort of, I don't know, it's to spark something in me, and I was obsessed with the show Family Ties when I was maybe a little older, and I read an article about Gary David Goldberg in People magazine in like, I don't know, maybe 1986 or something like that, and I wasn't even 10 years old, and it talked about what a showrunner was, and I obviously at that point had no idea. I didn't ever know that somebody was like actually behind the scenes pulling the strings. And I remember reading that article because I had this moment of realization, even that young, going, I think I could do that. And it's just sort of been my goal ever since.
How about you, Eric?
Similar, actually. I came up as sort of like Spielberg nut, that was like, it was E.T., it was, 83, I was 9 years old, I like came home from that movie and was like, to my mom, I'm like, someone had to make that, right? And she was like, yeah, and I said, okay, well then that's what I want to do. And then but I was from Ohio and my family's from the scrap metal business, and so I had to just kind of figure it out with a video camera on my shoulder, and went to USC because that's the only film school whose name makes its way back to Toledo, Ohio. And just kind of like cobbled it together. I got into TV, and I thought, I was like insufferable piece of shit that was just like, I want to direct, and here's my hat, and I was just that guy, and and then I wasn't getting like a lot of traction. I wonder why. And I had a meeting with Warner Brothers, and they were like, they liked my short films, and they invited me to write a pilot, and I just had like the best time. It was like 2003. And then I wrote another one, and then that got made, and suddenly I'm getting things made, and everyone in television has such wonderful humility and has this sort of let's get it done energy that I to this day still love, and it just felt like coming home. So, and I never turned away since.
Prentice?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just kind of 3 for 3 a little bit. I was the same way. I mean, I grew up in the 80s where certainly like I grew up a single child. My mom was going to law school at night, and so I was pretty much with my grandparents every afternoon, and not like grandparents now where like they like do cool stuff. I had like the grandparents that like watch the news from like 3 to 7 and then watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune till 8. They were like play outside grandparents, and so I had to entertain myself or like watch a lot of TV. So I would just watch like the Different Strokes and Family Ties and and I just got I love comedy. And I just remember at the end of, I forget, it's not, I don't know if it's Stephen Cannell, but it was the Sit Ubu Sit, Good Dog. And that's when I was like, oh, that guy seems to be like the guy in charge. Like that's the last.
That's Gary David Goldberg.
Yeah, it's Gary
that Goldberg. So yeah, so like Sit Ubu Sit. So,
everything goes back to Gary David Goldberg.
It's all Gary.
So that was, and I didn't know what, I grew up in LA, but I still didn't know anybody in the business at all. Like my family ran a furniture store. So that was pretty much what I knew. And Spike Lee used to write these books as he would make movies, like a journal. And I used to just buy them and read them. And he talked about going to film school, and he went to NYU. And at the time I was like, oh, USC film school had this like summer program for high school students. And I was like, oh, let me go try that thing out my junior year of high school. And it was like 2 weeks. You got to live on campus and like take film classes. And I did that for 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, this is like all I want to do for the rest of my life. And like Eric, I ended up going to USC film school, and that was it. I was just like, I fell in love with the whole process. And also coming up again, similar in the thing where I got my first shot in '04 at a time when TV was like the stepchild. It's like if you were doing TV, you were slumming it. And or you were in TV jail, you were in movie jail. So like go do TV for a while and like go to the minors and come back up. And so it's been, and that's how I always viewed myself, as like, I was never the cool kid in school. I was like the funny kid, but like nobody wants to like sleep with the funny kid. And so I love sort of like making my bones in TV at a time where like it wasn't hot to do TV. And so now to be here where like Meryl Streep's and Nicole Kidman's only doing TV, it's just like a fun time to like be super creative and to be the cool kids. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's fun while it's going on right now.
Yeah, real quick, I know you'll ask someone else, but my wife at a school event met Gary David Goldberg's daughter and was like, Ubu was your dog. Yes, Ubu was my dog. Ubu was the family dog. So just to bring it all back to Gary David Goldberg.
Shout out to Gary David Goldberg, just inspiring the whole crew.
Yeah.
And Lee, how about you? When did you know you wanted to work in this business?
Well, my stepfather, Gary David Goldberg, I was in college, and I loved TV and movies, and was a virgin late into my life, and just watched a lot of television. And for me, it was kind of like I didn't know that anyone did it. Like, you guys were all watching TV and saying like, "Oh, I want to do that," and for me, it didn't occur to me that other people actually wrote it. And so a guy that I went to a small school in Connecticut, and one of the guys was writing a Seinfeld spec, and that was the first time that it ever occurred to me that Seinfeld had writers, and that I knew they had writers. I didn't know that I could touch someone who could potentially be a writer for Seinfeld. And I went home that summer, and my best friend and I started writing screenplays, and every summer of college, we wrote a script. So when we came out to LA in '99, we had 3 scripts, and I was like, okay, so now the money will start rolling in. And no one read or wanted to talk to us about these terrible scripts that we had written. And then I was an assistant and a writer's assistant, and kind of worked my way up through that, and was always just kind of writing at nights and on the weekends, because I had no friends and I had no girlfriends. And so it was really just me and the television, and my kind of quasi writing partner at the time. And and then I got hired on JAG, which is not the way that you get on The Office, but I got hired based off of my Sopranos spec to be hired on JAG. And then I was fired from JAG and had to go back to being an assistant. And then I think 3 years later, I wrote something else and then got going. And then, to be a showrunner, I think is also very different from being a writer. You're an executive, and you manage hundreds of people, and you have gigantic budgets, even if you're working out of weird trailers. I think that I always had an interest in kind of the managerial side alongside the writing side.
And Billy, what about you?
Well, the first thing I ever sold was in television when I was 19, and I was at UCLA, go Bruins. I sold an episode of The Jetsons, and I'm sort of a hero in my fraternity at that moment in time. It's one of those things where if you do it once, it's really cool. If you do it twice, you're just this guy who writes for The Jetsons. So I did it once, and then I, for the next 30 years, I indulged my feature pretensions. And then I saw the memo that was going around Hollywood that, drama in features was dead. And I was, the last person to ever see that memo. I had hung on forever and started to realize that there was all of this ground that features had surrendered to television, because television was just doing it so well. And that became the new true north for me. Although I'm the last person to have figured it out, I'm glad that I did figure it out, because something like the Comey Rule would have been a disaster if I tried to make it as a feature. And I'm eternally grateful that it found a home on television.
And I'm curious, with the success of all these streaming sites like Netflix and Amazon, kids are growing up today not knowing what commercials are, not knowing what it's like to wait a week to find out if Mulder died or not. And how does that change your writing processes? Liz, we talked about this a little bit on Dead to Me, how you kind of write the cliffhangers knowing people will just keep watching. They don't have to wait to see the answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's, as a writer, I think there's great freedom with no commercials, because it doesn't hold you to a specific form where, you have to, you're going to have 3 or 4 acts, and you have to set up a certain sort of often artificial cliffhanger, like a forced moment, because you have to go to a commercial and you really want the people to come back. And I think that it's there's a limitation, creatively, when you're forced into that formula. So for me, it was such a gift to be able to break out from those parameters and just go like, oh, wait a minute, I don't even need an act break.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even, it doesn't need to be any of those things. And I'm really glad I had, that background. I'm glad I know how to do that. And I did it for so many years. But being able to just create your own formula, to just defy, the storytelling tropes, it really allows for the more surprising, twisty kind of storytelling that you see on Dead to Me and so many of these shows. Like, you just, it allows you to, I think, really find your own voice as a writer. Like, how would you tell this if you could tell it any way you want? And I mean, like, it's such an amazing gift to be able to do that.
Yeah, I actually want to second that, because I mean, I'm old enough, having worked in, that Prentice put it well, like the farm teams of television at the time, when it was not at all cool. And I started and it was teaser plus 4 acts. And that's not even what they do anymore. And teaser plus 4 is, you're in the cliffhanger business. You're like, I got to get them back over the soap commercials. Then about a couple years in, all the networks made the decision to go teaser plus 5, because they wanted to get another commercial break in there. So we're writing acts that are 3-4 pages long, like, it's just insane, and then when I started, it was 44 minutes, and then they shaved it back to 42 and change. And so just the parameters of it were so extreme by the end, that it was, I mean, I agree with Liz. It's learning how to write a haiku, but in no way does it give you a format to actually be, to express yourself the way you want to. And so, moving into streaming, and by the way, like 8 episodes, like all I got to do is 8 episodes. Yes. I used to do 22 a year. And
doesn't it take the same amount of time?
Yeah, it does. Oh, that I'm having the time.
Yeah, The Office would do 24, 25, wouldn't The Office?
I just shut down after 24. One year we did 28.
Wow.
It's unconscionable. It's just that's just crazy. The nice thing also about streaming, by the way, is, I mainly do half hours. A half hour could be 31 minutes, or a half hour could be 25.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing dictatorial about, like, oh, you need to get to 21:30, okay, maybe once, like, you beg the network to get 15 extra seconds, or you beg the network that, like, it's really better at 19:49, you're really able to just tell the story that you want to tell. And if it's 5 minutes longer or 5 minutes less, they don't seem to care as much. Yeah. And so it is like you're making like a mini movie every week, which is different from the way, we came up.
And to add to that, I can think the other great part about streaming, and I don't know what the other platforms are like, but it's just less chefs in the kitchen. to like, and things become like, you know, network stuff can almost be like, here's our notes, go do them. And you feel like you have to kind of have this like, you know, sort of like Nixon Frost debate about like how we're going to do the notes, as opposed to like, at least it is, as my experience has been, it's just much more conversational, or it's much more, hey, it's like, you know, you're talking to one or two people, and you're just able to, again, to do the best version of the show, as opposed to, oh, it has to, again, fit this thing, and I have an agenda, and this studio person has an agenda. It's much more just artist friendly in so many ways. At least that's been my experience.
Mine too.
And we are out of time, but just real quick, if you could each tell me your TV obsessions growing up. What shows did you tape on the VHS and rewatch until they burned out?
Twilight Zone was the single best show I ever watched, and that holds to this day. And then besides that, it was all like lovable junk. Like I loved A-Team, I loved Knight Rider. Even the dumb, weird spin-off, like the ones like Manimal, and like just whatever version of hour-long action garbage that had usually a cool car, Hardcastle, McCormick, Riptide. Like that stuff was the bomb.
I would say for me, Twilight Zone for sure, and remains so to this day. By far the most powerful TV experience I ever had was Roots. That was before was such a thing as a VCR, but there's no question that impacted me more than anything I ever saw before or since on TV.
Wait, I want to change my answer to Roots.
No, but Manimal was great too, Eric. No problem.
Manimal, Roots. For me, it was Seinfeld. I think Seinfeld is like a masterclass in comedy writing, and so the number of times I've been in a comedy room where it gets referenced, either we're trying to do a version of something that Seinfeld did, or just the way that the kind of the cadence of the jokes and the structure of it, and really just digging into kind of the specificity was something that was huge. And of course, I agree. Knight Rider. There was Airwolf, and then there was one on a motorcycle guy, a cop who rode a motorcycle that was Knight Rider.
Street Hawk.
Street Hawk is really where most of my Little America is really influenced most by Street Hawk.
I sort of already talked about Family Ties, but I would add to that Facts of Life, Different Strokes, Golden Girls. Pretty much like all of the NBC sitcoms from like 1983 to 91. I'll throw in a Too Close for Comfort.
Definitely Too Close for Comfort.
That was good.
I mean, yeah, Three's Company. I mean, it's a little bit earlier, but all of those multicams, just like that was my youth.
For me, I'd say, I mean, now it's like horrible to say it, but Cosby was like just amazing. I
was going to say that, but I didn't.
Dukes of Hazzard was my shit. And another one that like was I remember this one was really one that showed me TV can kind of be whatever, and it was the first show that I remember being very different, was Wonder Years. And I remember like the episode kind of ending sad on the swings, and I was like, whoa. I remember I felt weird by it, but also like, this is real. And it was just a different way of see a TV show. It really was like kind of opened up what a TV show could be at a young age. And I was like, wow, that's really cool that they don't have to like have a laugh track or a joke. And it's like, has a film look. Like it was the first thing I'd seen like that as a kid. So yeah. So
my new favorite show is Marcus's cat on his shoulder.
I know.
I just noticed the cat.
Thank you everyone so much. This was absolutely phenomenal. We will see you, I guess. We'll see your shows when they debut, whenever, after this whole COVID thing lets you go back to actually produce them.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye.
Congrats, everybody. Great work.